Story 1: The Scratching Behind the Door. When I agreed to dog sit for my neighbor, Mrs. Dalton, I thought it would be easy. Her golden retriever, Max, was old, calm, and mostly slept all day. She left Friday morning, handing me a key and a short list of instructions. Feed him twice. Don't let him out after 10. And whatever happens, don't open the basement door. At first, I laughed. I thought it was just one of those odd warnings old people give when they're overprotective about their homes. But that night, I learned she wasn't joking. Around midnight, Max began growling, low, uneasy sounds from deep in his chest. He stared at the basement door like something was moving behind it. Then came the scratching. Not random, rhythmic. Like fingernails dragging across the wood in slow, deliberate strokes. Max started barking uncontrollably, and I could swear I heard a faint whisper between his barks, a voice, mumbling words I couldn't make out. I called Mrs. Dalton, but she didn't answer. So I grabbed my phone's flashlight and slowly approached the door. When I pressed my ear against it, the scratching stopped. Then, from the other side, I heard it, clear this time. A voice, soft but human, saying, "Don't let him see me." The next morning, Mrs. Dalton returned early. Max ran to her, tail wagging, but she didn't look relieved, she looked terrified. "Did you open it?" she asked. I shook my head. She sighed, went to the basement, and whispered something before locking it with a chain. Then she turned to me and said, "Good. Last time, someone did. And Max hasn't stopped barking at the window since." Story 2: The Dog Who Wouldn't Stop Staring at the Window. I was house-sitting for a couple who had gone on a week-long cruise. They had a big German shepherd named Rex, quiet, obedient, and intimidating in size, but friendly. For the first 2 nights, everything was fine. He'd eat, sleep near the couch, and sometimes sit by the window to watch the quiet suburban street. But on the 3rd night, something changed. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to the sound of low growling. Rex was sitting at the window again, completely still, his ears tilted forward, eyes fixed on the yard. The blinds were slightly open, and the only light came from the flickering street lamp outside. I walked closer and whispered, "Hey, what's wrong, buddy?" He didn't even flinch. His breathing was heavy, not from fear, but from focus. Then, just as I reached him, I saw it, a tall, thin figure standing across the street, half hidden behind a tree. It wasn't moving. Just watching the house. I froze. My phone was dead, so I couldn't record or call anyone. I slowly backed away, closed the blinds, and turned off the lights. Rex stayed at that window for the rest of the night, motionless, growling softly every few minutes. The next morning, I stepped outside to check. There were footprints in the dirt near the tree, bare, human, leading away from the house. But halfway down the sidewalk, they just stopped. Like whoever it was had vanished. That night, I heard scratching on the glass. I turned on the porch light, nothing. When I looked back, Rex was gone from the window. He was now sitting behind me, tail tucked, trembling, his eyes still fixed on that same spot outside. As if he could see something I couldn't anymore. Story 3: The Scratching Inside the Walls. I was hired to watch an old woman's house while she was in the hospital. She had 2 small dogs, both quiet and lazy, the kind that mostly slept near the heater. The first few nights were peaceful, until the scratching began. It started softly, behind the living room wall, near the baseboard. Like nails brushing wood. I thought it was mice, so I didn't panic. But by the next night, the sound had spread through the kitchen walls, then up to the ceiling. And the dogs wouldn't go near that side of the house anymore. On the fourth night, I heard it again, the scratching, only faster this time. Almost frantic. One of the dogs whimpered and hid under the couch. The others started barking at the corner like it was alive. Then, the scratching stopped all at once. And something knocked back from inside the wall. 3 slow, heavy knocks. I froze. I whispered, "Hello?" And then, from deep inside the wall, came the faintest voice, raspy and dry. "Let me out." I ran outside, shaking, and called the homeowner's daughter. She arrived in 15 minutes and looked pale when I told her what I heard. Then she said something that still chills me. They sealed off that part of the wall 10 years ago. My mother didn't want anyone touching it. The scratching never stopped completely. Even after I left, she called me weeks later, crying, saying the dogs had started barking again. Only now, she could hear footsteps inside the walls at night. Story 4, The Dog That Stared at the Door. It was my last night watching a golden retriever named Max. The owners were away on vacation, and I'd been staying at their countryside house for a week. Nothing unusual until that final night. Around midnight, Max suddenly lifted his head from the floor and started growling. Not barking, growling, low and deep, like something had stepped too close. He faced the front door, hackles raised, teeth bared. I turned off the TV and listened. No cars, no wind, no footsteps. Just silence, until I heard it, a single knock on the door. 3 seconds passed. Then another. And another. Each one perfectly spaced, like whoever, or whatever, was outside didn't care how long it took. I grabbed my phone to call the owners, but Max barked so violently it startled me. He lunged toward the window and slammed against it, snarling. I followed his gaze, but there was no one there. Just the empty yard, the trees swaying slightly under the moonlight. Then I noticed something. The front door handle was slowly turning. I ran and grabbed it, trying to hold it still, but it kept moving against my grip, deliberate, heavy, cold. Max barked louder, clawing at the ground, like he was trying to dig away from the door. Then, without warning, everything stopped. The handle stilled. The barking stopped. Even the crickets outside went silent. I stayed awake until dawn, shaking. When the owners returned the next day, I told them everything. The husband went pale and said quietly, "You said Max growled at the door?" I nodded. He exhaled. "That's strange, because ever since we moved here, he's been terrified of that door. We thought it was just trauma from before we adopted him, when he lived in that same house." That's when I noticed the scratches, deep, uneven, old, across the inside of the door. Like a dog had clawed there for years, trying to keep something out. Story 5, The Dog in the Mirror. When I was 16, I used to walk dogs around the neighborhood for extra money. One night, I got a call from a woman who lived on the edge of town. She said she'd pay double if I could stay overnight with her dog while she was away. I agreed. When I arrived, she was already waiting at the door, pale, quiet, nervous. Her dog, a small black lab named Toby, stood behind her legs, staring at me. Before leaving, she said only one thing. "Don't let him look in the mirror after midnight." I thought it was the weirdest rule I'd ever heard. Still, I nodded and laughed it off. The house was old, creaky floors, large mirrors on every wall, and that strange smell of damp wood. Toby followed me everywhere, tail low, never barking. By midnight, the air felt heavy, and I noticed him sitting in front of the mirror in the hallway, completely still. I whispered, "Come on, buddy," but he didn't move. Then I saw it. In the mirror, his reflection wasn't sitting. It was standing. The hair on his back rose. He began to growl at the glass, but the reflection didn't move. It just stared, eyes glowing faintly, mouth closed, perfectly still. I threw a blanket over the mirror, grabbed Toby, and locked us both in the bedroom. All night, I could hear soft tapping coming from the hallway, like claws on glass. When the owner returned in the morning, she didn't ask how the night went. She just looked at Toby and whispered, "Did he look?" I hesitated. Before I could answer, Toby walked past her, sat in front of the mirror again. And this time, only the reflection wagged its tail.